Welcome to Business is Good, the podcast all about what it means to be in business in the 21st century. Small and medium-sized businesses are the lifeblood of the UK economy, and globally they can and will have a huge impact on society, the economy and how we live our lives. From technology disruption to reworking a solution to solve the world's biggest problem, Business is Good is a podcast about what it takes to be successful and how every business defines that in different ways. Business is no longer just about being defined by what you do, but it's about giving back and redefining the problems and how we solve them in a way that works for you. I'm your host, Caroline Sumners, and I'll be giving you weekly inspirational stories from business owners who are building business and solving problems. Okay, well, that is it for the first series of Business is Good podcast. When I launched the podcast, I started recording it back in August, I had a really clear idea of what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk to businesses that had a good business in many ways, or in two ways. A good business in the sense that it was, paying the bills, was delivering what they wanted it to do for their family in terms of finance and in terms of employees and things like that, but also a good business that in some way was giving back or had a bigger purpose or a higher purpose. And hopefully with the first 10 interviewees, I managed to succeed in that. So as I said, this is the end of the first series. I've decided to take a break over Christmas because one thing I learned when I was recording this podcast was, yes, I had really good advice from Alex Chisnell in that he said, make sure when you launch, you've got at least 3 or 4 in the, recorded, which I did have. And I managed to keep kind of like ahead of myself for quite some time. And then things got really busy with client work and, and life. And I found myself kind of scrabbling to catch up. So I decided that I was always going to do a series, a serial podcast. So I decided to stop at 10. Now seems like a good time. I'm off on holiday in 2 days. And I'll come back in the new year with another series of Business is Good. But although this time we've done stories of modern business, so we've spoken to sort of 10 different business owners about the type of business that they have. Next series is going to be about building a modern business. And it's likely that I'm going to go between the two with each series. So for building a modern business, we're going to look at the key things that you need to think about. And I may well, hopefully, go back to some of the guests I've interviewed this series. For instance, someone like Chris Blackwell, who was the last episode that we did last week, he talks all about building a business with purpose. And that really is key for how you build a modern business. And there'll be many different things that we'll look at in terms of marketing, positioning, values, promotion, different types of things that you can do, and also how you go about building a brand and all sorts of different things. So that's what we're going to do next series. But I just thought I'd sort of finish on a couple of really key highlights for me for this first series. I think the first one has to be the second episode that I did with Alice and Sophie from The Joyful Web. It was actually the only interview that I did in person in the end. I had actually planned to do most of them in person, but just life got in the way and some people were overseas, so it wasn't possible. But Alice and Sophie have got the Joyful Web down in Brighton, and I took a little morning trip down there. And it was really, really fantastic to meet both of them. But what was really great about that interview was we just had such great discussion about how you go about building a business from scratch. And for me, their story was amazing because not only are they working as marketing professionals on helping on specifically helping businesses with purpose. They started a business not even really knowing each other. And it's been a real story and a real development kind of along the way for them. And that was a fascinating interview for me. And I really loved talking to them. Another one that I, of course, loved was with Nadia Sidebottom, who runs a a small business based from home, and gives back in a major way to a charity very close to my heart, and that's Schnauzerfest. If you've been listening to all 10 episodes, you'll know that Rufus and the Schnauzers feature a couple of times, and I've mentioned them a couple of times in terms of purpose-driven businesses, giving back, and on all sorts of different things. There's some really good examples of some of the businesses that I've spoken to and examples that I've used, particularly in episode 10 when I was speaking to Chris Blackwell. And then I think another one that I really enjoyed was with Paul Hargreaves, where we spent a lot of time talking about B Corps and how even as a small business and a service-based business, you can really structure your business in a way that is set up to benefit everybody, and not just the shareholders and not just the business owner, but through to how you recruit staff, how you think about transportation and all sorts of things. And actually, as a result of the two interviews I did with both Paul and Chris, I am looking into further how I can make my business into a B Corp and really look back at the purpose of my business. And I think finally, the interview that I want to highlight is the first one I did with my good friend Gethin Jones, who is local to me here in Portsmouth. And his story is really just so inspirational. He really is somebody that lives and breathes his whole purpose. And he's got a fascinating story around how he's developed his life and his business. And it was a really fun interview to do. And actually, I said, I only did one in person. Gethin lives probably only about a mile from me, and yet we couldn't even manage to get together for that. So hopefully you've enjoyed this first series of the podcast. It was a real kind of moment for me to actually launch it and get it out there. And I've thoroughly enjoyed doing it. And I've had some really wonderful feedback, which is really good. So I just wanted to say thank you to all of my guests this series, and wish everybody a happy Christmas. It seems a bit ridiculous, but it is a month today because I'm recording this on the 25th of November. Wish everybody a happy Christmas, and I'll be back in the new year with another episode. So that's it for now, and see you all in 2020. Thanks a lot. Bye. Tune in next week when we have more inspirational stories talking about moving your business beyond what it is and moving it more towards what you're in business for, what's important, and doing good and changing the way things should be done.